everybody, and welcome to the Farmers Supply Association Agri Report. I'm Randy Klepechka, agronomist with Farmers Supply Association, where we're taping on July the 12th, and we're still on the fast track, and I've kind of talked about that most of this year since planting began. We've had an excellent start, and it just continues, and things are really moving along quickly. I've been talking to several guys that are in kind of the same field as I am, and we're all in agreement. It kind of feels like August already because of the work we're doing, the things we're doing are stuff that we normally would be doing maybe, late July or August. So things are moving along quickly. The forecast looks warm to hot for the next at least week or so, and that'll keep things on the fast track. And next month is August, and harvest will be starting on a lot of things starting in August. So moving along quickly. I'm still optimistic about the crop. We haven't done anything yet, but I think that certainly the potential's there. What we need is plenty of sunshine, a timely rain now and then, but overall sunshine and moderate temperatures, and I think we're set up for an excellent crop. So again, long way to go, but we still got a chance. I'm going to talk about the rice crop now and the things going on with the rice crop. As you can see behind me, this field is heading. It's by far the most advanced field that I look at and that I've seen around the area, the territory that I work in. This field is headed to a large extent. It's not all headed, but a lot of it is headed, and again, that just shows that things really are on the fast track. This field was planted, I think probably around the 2nd of April, somewhere in that 1st to 3rd of April range. It's Rice Tech 7521, and again, it looks good. And it's really, really advanced. You can already see some heads starting to bend over a little bit. And again, this will definitely be harvested in August, and maybe the 20th or so of August, or even before that, the way it's looking. So again, just an advanced crop right now. Going to talk about some of the things we need to be looking at in our rice crop right now, some of the management items we need to keep in mind. I really got 3 things I want to talk about today. One is the boot nitrogen shot, 2, fungicide use, and 3, rice stink bugs. Let's talk about the boot shot, which is a nitrogen shot that is used for the hybrids. Most of our regular varieties, we apply a mid-season shot when that rice goes into the reproductive stage. But the hybrids are a little different, and I often get asked that question, why you wait on the hybrids? Well, the hybrid is a very good scavenger of nutrients. So, if it needs nitrogen, its roots can reach down there in the soil and get some native nitrogen out of the soil and use that to make a crop. So you can pretty much maximize your yield almost to a large extent just with the nitrogen in the soil and what you apply pre-flood. Now, the researchers found that there's a little bit of advantage to going ahead and putting out a shot, but we want to wait till boot to do that. You get a little bit of yield advantage, a little bit of milling yield increase, a little less lodging. So a little bit of this, a little bit of that adds to normally about a $20 per acre profit increase by doing the boot shot instead of the mid-season shot. So, it's probably not the end of the world if you don't do it, but I would do it and get that yield bump and milling bump that you get by putting that boot shot out there. Timing of the boot shot, again, obviously the boot stage, but from the time that the base of that flag leaf is visible, the flag leaf is completely out and the base of it's visible until the time that boot starts to split and that head start popping out. Not a problem to see some of the heads already popped out. You're still fine with that. But again, just really about the time those boots go to splitting, somewhere in that area is when I like to see this application made. If you wait that long, you're not going to get any increased growth to any extent, and that'll help on your lodging quite a bit. So again, that's the boot shot. The rate is 65 pounds of urea per acre, and the pilots normally charge a base of for 100 pounds of urea, but so some people say, well, why not go ahead and put 100 since I'm paying for it? Well, there's no benefit to putting more than 65 pounds of urea. The research shows that these benefits I talked about kind of max out at 65 pounds. So really no need spending that extra money for that extra 35 pounds. Just do the 65 pounds at late boot, and it's going to give you, hopefully about a $20 profit return there. So that's item number 1. Again, that's just strictly for the hybrids. Next thing I want to talk about is fungicide use. There's several schools of thought when it comes to fungicide use. Of course, you've got some people that aren't going to use a fungicide. They're not going to scout. They're not going to know if they have any diseases out there, and they're not going to spend any money on a fungicide. I think that's kind of the minority, but there are a few like that. And then you move to really probably 3 other schools of thought out there. One is guys that scout their fields, or their consultant scouts it for diseases. Mainly it's talking about sheath blight and blast. And if they see sheath blight and it's advancing up the plant, or if they see blast lesions and it's a susceptible variety in a susceptible situation, they'll apply fungicides for those. If they don't, they won't. So that's kind of one school of thought. Again, that's the scout and spray method, to call it. Next is the automatic spray school of thought. That's, these guys, pretty sure that they see increased yield, increased quality, increased milling. They think that they get that, and often do see that with the automatic fungicide application. So they're going to do it automatically regardless of what they're seeing in the field. They're just going to try to time it right. So that's kind of that school of thought, and that's the, again, I call that the automatic fungicide application. So that's another school of thought. The next school of thought is it's also kind of an automatic spray application, but it's a little different situation. It's an application for diseases that we can't see. These are the smuts, kernel smut, fall smut, and I also throw narrow brown leaf spot in that category. Most people don't talk about narrow brown leaf spot very much, but it is a disease we see occasionally and not every year. Certain years we see some of it, certain years we don't. But I want to throw that in one of those diseases that you don't see till it's too late. And these fungicides that we use for the kernel smut and the fall smut are also effective on that fungus, the Cercospora fungus. So again, that's I call that the automatic spray for the diseases such as smut and narrow brown leaf spot. So that's another school of thought right there. As far as timing, obviously, if you're doing that scout and spray approach, then you need to see the disease out there. It's when you see the sheath blight starting to move up the plant, a third to half of the plant's half it, and then, you need to go ahead and spray. So they'll spray with that. If they see blast lesions and it's a blast susceptible variety, field can't be watered well, they'll make those blast applications. Normally we like 2 applications for blast, one at late boot and the other when the head's about 75% of the way out of the boot. So those are your timings for those. For the other diseases I was talking about, the kernel smut, the fall smut, the narrow brown leaf spot, that's also a late boot timing there. So, but you don't want to go extremely late with that timing. With the smuts, if you see that boot splitting, then you're really too late to get good activity on the smuts. So from about the time that flag leaf is just out of the boot, you see the base of it, until that time that boot, before it starts to split, you want to go ahead and make that application of a fungicide. Again, when you see that boot splitting or it's about to split, sometimes you can actually see through that sheath, and you know the head's about to come out, then again, you're too late for that smut activity. So try to get out there about the time that flag leaf is completely out and just a little bit past that, and you'll get good control of the smuts with that application. As far as our fungicides for the smut and the narrow brown leaf spot, then we want to go with propiconazole, which is tilt or generic tilt. That's a very economical application, so use that for the smuts or the narrow brown leaf spot. For the sheath blight and blast, then we want to use one of the combination products, I call them, that contain both a triazole and a strobilurin fungicide. Really, we've got basically 2 choices right now. One is Quilt XL and the other is Amistar Top. So again, that's your fungicide activity and your fungicide recommendations. So that's where we're at on that. Be sure and call if you've got specific questions about disease susceptibility and rates and things like that. The last thing I want to talk about is rice stink bugs. And what you learned about rice stink bugs up to 2 or 3 years ago, it's kind of changed quite a bit. I mean, the stink bug's obviously still the same insect, but a lot of our recommendations have changed about rice stink bugs. So, if you've been out of the loop or not been listening the last 2 or 3 years, be sure and listen, because things have changed a little bit as far as timing of when we scout and also the insecticides that we use. You can go around field edges probably right now before heading and find some stink bugs, especially if you got barnyard grass around the edges of the field. So, don't necessarily worry about those. Those aren't harming anything. They may or may not go to the rice when it starts heading. But when the rice starts heading, that's when we need to start thinking about scouting, and more specifically, not just heading, but really we want to get to about the soft doe stage. And we talked about some new recommendations, and in general we want to wait until the rise gets in that soft doe stage. That's normally about 10 days after beginning heading, somewhere 10 days to 2 weeks in there. That's when we really want to get serious about our rice stink bug scouting. The main reason, there's a couple of reasons on that. One, we used to think that we got quite a bit of yield loss maybe from those earlier feedings of rice stink bugs. But the recent research is fine. There's not much yield loss up until that that rice gets in the soft doe stage. So these early feedings, probably not getting any yield loss, obviously not getting any peck damage right there. So we can kind of ride these things out a little bit until that soft doe stage before we start scouting and make our applications. Now the exception to that would be if you got some really high numbers, you're getting 15, 20 per 10 sweeps before that doe stage. You might want to go ahead and think about making the application if you have those high numbers. Now moving on to the insecticides, again start scouting in earnest about soft doe. The treatment level, if you wait till that point, is 10 stink bugs per 10 sweeps. So if you get to that point, we need to think about insecticides. Like I said, 2 or 3 years ago, in our old way of treating, we used to be able to use lambda-cy. It's a pyrethroid, generic pyrethroid, very, very economical, cheap to use. So, that's what we used to use and get great control with it. Now we don't get that out of that material. We started seeing, loss of control, less control with that insecticide a few years ago, and I've actually been on the front end of a lot of that work there that's been done on that. That's showing that we get less control and collecting insects for resistance screening and all that kind of things. And we're certainly seeing a resistance or tolerance to the lambda-cy, on the rice stink bug. So we really kind of changed our way of thinking the last 2 or 3 years on that. The university guys saying they're still getting 50 to 60% control in some of their screenings with lambda-cy. I don't see that in the field. What I've seen the last 2 or 3 years is sometimes when I put lambda-cy out, and get almost no control. The stink bugs will still be there in those high numbers. So, I don't see that right now. So I think we definitely got to look at other insecticides, and lambda-cy is just not going to cut it in most cases. So, hopefully we'll get a Section 3 on indigo. We've been able to get a Section 3 the last 2 years on indigo. ZCX, very effective insecticide on rice stink bug. Hopefully we'll get that. We should get news pretty quickly on that. I've written a letter to the guys who are in charge of getting that Section 18. I've written that for Farmer Supply Association, and hopefully that'll help, and a lot of other guys have too. But it looks favorable that we're going to get a Section 18, but it's still not official yet. So hopefully we get one soon. We'll need one within the next couple of weeks or so, and hopefully that's coming real soon. There's also a product called Tenchu that's about as equally effective as the Indigo ZCX. But the thing with Tenchu, there's just not a lot of availability of it, not a lot out there in the pipeline, so it wouldn't go very far. I think I heard some maybe 70,000 acres or so, and we've got 1.4 million just in Arkansas alone. So, we're just not going to have enough of that product. So again, hopefully we get the Indigo Section 18, and we'll be able to use that. And again, it's very effective. We've used it the last 2 years once we've seen this slippage of control with the lambda-cy. So again, that's where we're at right now. Again, we've got a crop that's on the fast track. Hopefully when I talk to you next month, we'll be right on the borderline of getting some harvest done. We'll be close to some at that point, and we'll be talking about irrigation termination and some things related to harvest. So until then, this has been Randy Klepechka with your Farmer Supply Association Agri Report.